Good evening, Stonegate audience. Welcome to the very first edition ever of a Bill Griesmer Daily Double. So I posted this on Facebook a little bit earlier. What happened, I'm not quite sure why, but my video last week did not record. So I did that, and a couple people asked, for the information and for that video again. And I still had my board set up, so I figured why not? I'm going to just kind of do a back-to-back here. So if you did listen last week at this time, this will be very, very similar, essentially the same presentation. And then join me again in about an hour at 9 o'clock for the second volume of the Daily Double. So I was talking with a local landlord, and he told me that he was interested in selling his rental unit to a tenant. However, he still had an existing mortgage on that. So what I told him is, well, why can't you do it anyway? Why don't you just do what's called a wraparound mortgage? And he looked at me like I had three heads. So I thought I might just make a little presentation of it here and show you guys exactly what that is. And as I was preparing for this, it made me think back to a number of years ago, back when credit cards were a little more, plentiful, maybe would be the best way to put it. I remember taking out a $5,000 cash advance at 0%. And then I turned around and I invested that $5,000. I don't know if invest is the right word, but I just put that into a standard money market account. And I think the money market account probably paid, 3 or 4%. So I probably made, about $150 through the course of a year. Not a very large amount of money, although that was shortly after I graduated, so it sure felt like a lot at the time. But my point is, what I'm getting at is I borrowed at 0%, and then I put it into an account that earned me interest. So I had lower costs on the front end, and then I made money on that at the back end. That's all you're doing with a wrap mortgage. So essentially, you're looking at buying a house, probably with seller financing, and then you're looking at selling a house, again, probably with seller financing. And then you're making money on the difference. Again, that's all you're doing is essentially buying low and selling high, but you're doing it with financing and with terms. So in this example I made up here, you buy a house. Some of you outside of the Midwest might think this is unrealistic, but in the Midwest it is pretty realistic. So say I buy a house with seller financing for 360 months. That's your standard 30-year term. Say I agree to pay 6% interest rate. I agree to pay a total of $70,000. I take a note for $70,000. Say the payment, that comes out to a payment of $420. And say I put $7,000 down. For the purposes of this, that isn't that important, but it does play into the end of what you get in the end. And I thought it was more realistic that you'd have to put something down. And then say I turn around and shortly after I sell that house, a little bit shorter term, 240 months. A lot of people in that band, they actually like getting a loan with a shorter term because it's faster that they pay off the house. Say I get an 8% interest rate. That's pretty reasonable. You should be able to get a little bit higher both cost and interest rate on a seller financing when you sell via that. Say I sell that house then for $90,000, and that comes out to a payment of $753. So on that deal also, say I get the same 10% down, but instead of $7,000, I'm getting $9,000 down, because again, that's based on that $90,000 purchase price. So in the end, I'm going to end up doing very well on this deal. Okay. In the end, I'm going to get $2,000 down. That's the difference between the $9,000 that the new buyer paid me and between the $7,000 that I paid the original seller. I'm also going to make over time a difference of $333 per month. Again, that's the difference between the $753 payment that I'm receiving and then the $420 payment that I agreed to pay that original seller. Okay. And then I'm also getting, in the end, I'm picking up $20,000 of equity almost essentially right away. That's simply the difference between me selling it at 90,000 and then buying it at 70,000. So again, I'm nothing different other than buying low and then selling high. I'm just using financing and terms essentially to magnify that difference. And if people are really, really interested, this works out to a return of, I think it was around 15%, because you're essentially making even more than the 8% there, because you're making money on this equity that you have also. So hopefully that helps everybody. Hopefully this recorded tonight. Again, join me back here at 9 o'clock for the second edition, 2 and 2, the second edition of the Bill Griesmer Daily Double on this February evening. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody. And that is how you climb the hill. Thanks again. Have a good night. So I hit end live video. Yes. And then end, right?